Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Professor Hamamoto. It is April 9th, year 2023. It is 4 p.m., and we are celebrating Easter Sunday in some capacity, I hope. Hope you're all doing well. I thought I'd go live with some ongoing reading that I've been doing in conjunction with a larger project. And I thought the timing would be good since it is Easter Sunday. But we're going to today talk about an aspect of American religious history that is very powerful, very, very, very influential, even till this very day. We see manifestations of it in 2023, but we don't really recognize it as being a spiritual or religious movement. It's a longstanding movement, and it's a movement that had two major manifestations. This is what historians tell us. The first one was called I'm not going to lecture on this, don't worry. We're going to get into the whodunit very soon. But twice in American history, once in I think it was a colonial period, or maybe it was the early republic, but it's called the First Great Awakening, according to historians of American religion. I took a seminar on it once and read most of the major scholars, American scholars in the area, including these huge anthologies, these books, these readers, written by clergymen as well as experiencers, if you want to call them that. And the second part of it was the Second Great Awakening, right? They're two distinct but related movements. And as I alluded to earlier, we might be undergoing a third, depending on how you want to number it. A third, I see that my lighting's not so good. Let me see if I can, maybe the sun's going down. It's a little bit better. Yeah, excuse me. I'm sorry for doing some production. I don't have a producer. There you go. Trade-off, however, as you see the reflection of the lights in my glasses. So we have two major phenomena here, and so what, right? Well, the issue that I'm raising here is that the Second Great Awakening in particular had to do with the rise, the foundation, and I would say even the continuance of the great educational institution known as Stanford University. Now, originally it was named Leland Stanford Junior College, right? And when I first read that, I said, gee, I didn't know Stanford started out as a junior college. Because in California, there's a whole system they call them community colleges now. But in the old days, they were called junior colleges. So that means 2 years. Your first year, 2 years, go to junior college, then you go to a senior college. So that's what I was thinking. But indeed, what I learned, this is years ago. I'm not a rookie to this story, but I found out that it was named, the university we know today was named as an homage to the dearly departed son of the railroad, banking, political. He was once governor of California during the Civil War period, too. You can imagine all the money that was being moved around and the wealth that was being made at that point. And he was one of the chief beneficiaries of it. And even more so his wife, right? Because I said, the world is run by crazy ladies who inherited the wealth of their husbands who were 20 or 30 years older than them. Right? There wasn't that quite of an age gap, but he did predecease her, and she really was for better or worse, right? There's pros and cons. In fact, there were so many cons during her lifetime that it turns out that there were any number of people wanted to kill her, and indeed she was murdered. Jane Lathrop Stanford, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Both her husband, Leland Stanford, I'm not going to go into him. You've studied in the school. We had to, I went to California public schools. So, of course, we learn public history and California history, but he is a person of national stature. So I'm sure you know about him and Jay Gould and Rockefeller and all those other characters, right? So he's kind of very similar to William Randolph Hearst, although, I mean, not William Randolph Hearst, but George Hearst. He was the guy that made it big in mining, right? All these magnates kind of came to the fore around the same time. So, and there are some parallels also between, and that's one of the reasons why I'm have been moving into this particular thread of the research, because I've been talking, as you know, about Phoebe Apperson Hearst, and she was a contemporary of Jane Stanford, Lathrop Stanford. But in both cases today, from what I'm reading, the historians, as well as most of the journalists, it's going to take one of us, one these wild and wacky investigative people, to really get at the heart of where people like Phoebe Apperson Hearst came from, philosophically, metaphysically. I mean, we know where they came from politically. They came from wealth, power, and privilege, right? And same has to be said for Jane Stanford. And what I'm arguing here is they come right out of the spiritualist tradition of the Victorian age, because this was an Anglo-American historical phenomenon. Forgive me for a second. That is, on both sides of the Atlantic, there was huge interest in the afterlife. And I'll stick with the American situation. The primary interest in the U.S. in the second, especially around the Second Awakening time, is the huge loss of life that resulted in the mass disappearance, death, right, of large numbers of young men, soldiers. And until this day, from what I understand, combining all the wars subsequent to the Civil War, the casualty rate isn't anywhere near as what the United States of America experienced in the Civil War. So the carnage was incredible, and it left an indelible mark on American culture, society, and politics, and of course in the religious area, right? The religious sphere. And why would that be important for today? Because for those of you who might exit early, I want to state very clearly that I believe that the metaphysical problems, issues, and I say even ills and curses. This Easter Sunday, so I'll call it curse upon mankind. That the curses we are experiencing today in 2023 on Easter Sunday are historically traceable to this period of time, right? The Second Great Awakening, and also I would say the First Great Awakening, which I think was precipitated by the mass genocide of a different sort. And that was the mass genocide of the native population. So once the capitalist of London, city of London, you know the whole story, right? You know about the Rothschilds, you know about the banking. Also the people in, the financial capital of Paris, can't let them off the hook, right? And Berlin and all the world capitals, financial capitals, in addition to the usual suspects, right? After the first wave of genocide was done, then it became a situation of auto-genocide. Auto meaning self, and that would be the second, the American Civil War and the Second Great Awakening. So in this historical period of time, there was this man that we will see about in a moment here. And I have a little clip right here. In fact, we can see it's candy coated. So I won't play the whole deal, but it'll give you an idea of how this character, right, Leland Stanford, has entered into the mythology. Like when I was a kid, of course, he was a hero. He built all the railroads, and he helped develop America. And if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't be anywhere where we are today. Maybe true from a technology standpoint, but as I alluded to earlier, his latter day heirs, maybe not literal, but the metaphysical heirs, and I'll name him. It's Easter Sunday. His name's Elon Musk. His latter day manifestations, right? Let's not call him an heir to confuse. Let's call him a manifestation. Some guy that comes out of a different dimensional portal from South Africa via Canada versus other British holdings. I say British intentionally because this is one of the culprits, one of the sources of that possible sources of the Jane Stanford murder that is not alluded to, not even alluded to in two of the major books that I've read on it. And from what I think there are about 3 or 4 major books, and these are 2 academic books I'm talking about. All right, so let's talk about it in a moment. So, the point, hopefully you understand, is that while they're not bloodline related, and while he only went to school there, and I don't think that was an accident, that's part of the induction process. Elon Musk comes out of Stanford, as do most of these characters that are haunting our world. There were hauntings back then when Leland Stanford and Jane Lathrop Stanford, amongst her cohort of wealthy and some upper middle class white Americans, and I say white, I specify because in the Stanford magazine, there's a really good, otherwise it's a really good article about Jane Lathrop Stanford's involvement with spiritualism. That's the term that's used, sometimes called spiritism or spiritualism. That I've talked about it. I've alluded to it in other shows that I encourage you to go back to, because it's not just a sideshow in American history. It is the show in American history, right? We're distracted by the iPhones and all the machinery and the equipment, which, by the way, are manifestations of this larger metaphysical quest to shape or to engineer an idealized world, a racially idealized world, numerically, in terms of population size, in terms of its ethnicity, its religious composition. And you already see it, I'm touching upon eugenics, right? Because the Stanfords come out of eugenics, but not in a sort of nasty way necessarily. Well, how can there be a nice eugenicist? Well, there's something called positive eugenics, where the practitioners say that we love all human life, but we're going to make sure that our breed, our superior Anglo-Saxon breed, remains strong and vital. And by the way, that was the battle cry of David Starr Jordan, who was the inaugural president of Stanford University. And he's one of those Midwestern boys, the eugenicists, who come out of the ag schools. They hate it when they're referred to as an ag school, but that's really what they are. Stanford University is an ag school. Even today, it's referred to very, fondly as the farm, because it was a farm. It was a working farm. Little as the people back then know, or probably the people in 2023, most of them who are members of the racial group Asians that people like David Starr Jordan want to exclude from America and the United States as part of the eugenics program, especially since there's such a large percentage of the student population, and they don't know that. They don't understand. Okay, I promise to give you kind of a glimpse of sort of an idealized version of Leland Stanford here. Let's take a quick look. I won't belabor this particular point.
It was the gold rush of 1849 that really opened up California to the world. Gold miners made and lost riches within a few years, but the merchants that supplied the miners were the ones who earned the enduring wealth. The origin of Silicon Valley's focus on technology goes back to the founding of Stanford University. A consummate entrepreneur, Leland Stanford, who made his first fortune selling